The moment my boss called me just lucky, after I saved our company from losing $5 million, I knew my life was about to change forever. My name is Thaddeus, but everyone calls me Thad. I worked at a big law firm in downtown Chicago called Sterling Associates. The building was made of glass and steel, reaching up to touch the clouds. Every morning I'd walk through those shiny doors feeling proud to be part of something important. I wasn't a lawyer. I was just a guy who worked in the research department. My job was to dig through old papers, find important facts, and help the real lawyers win their cases. It wasn't glamorous, but I loved it. I felt like a detective, hunting for clues that could change everything. My boss was a man named Bartholomew Sterling III. Everyone called him Mr. Sterling, and he was the kind of guy who wore suits that cost more than my car. He had silver hair, cold blue eyes, and a smile that never reached his heart. He treated most of us like we were invisible, but I didn't mind. I just wanted to do good work. For 3 years, I gave everything to that job. I stayed late when others went home. I worked weekends when others relaxed. I found the missing pieces that won case after case. The lawyers got the credit, the bonuses, and the handshakes. I got a pat on the back and told to keep up the good work. But I didn't care about credit back then. I thought if I worked hard enough, if I proved myself enough, good things would come. I believed in fairness. I believed that doing right would lead to being treated right. How wrong I was. The case that changed everything started on a rainy Tuesday morning in March. I remember the sound of raindrops hitting the big windows of our office. Mr. Sterling called an emergency meeting for all department heads. The research team wasn't usually invited to these meetings, but our supervisor, a nice lady named Cordelia, came back looking worried. "We have a problem," she told us. "A big problem." She explained that our biggest client, a company called Megacorp Industries, was being sued. Someone claimed that Megacorp had stolen their invention, a new type of battery that could power electric cars for much longer. If Megacorp lost this case, they would have to pay $5 million. And if Megacorp couldn't pay, they might leave our law firm for a cheaper one. Losing Megacorp would be like losing half our business. People would get fired. The firm might even close down. "The trial starts in 2 weeks," Cordelia said. "We need to find proof that Megacorp invented this battery themselves, or we're all in trouble." The lawyers had been working on this case for months, but they were stuck. They had searched everywhere for proof, but couldn't find anything strong enough to win in court. The other side had documents showing they invented the battery first. It looked hopeless. That's when I raised my hand. "What if I tried looking?" I asked. Sometimes fresh eyes see things others miss. The room got quiet. Some people smiled in a way that wasn't kind. Others looked at me like I was crazy. "Thad," Cordelia said gently, "the best lawyers in the city have been working on this. What makes you think you can find something they missed?" I felt my face get hot, but I didn't back down. Maybe because I look at things differently. Maybe because I'm not a lawyer, I might see something they don't. Mr. Sterling, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped into the room. Everyone straightened up when they saw him. His expensive shoes clicked on the floor as he walked toward me. "You think you're smarter than my lawyers?" he asked. His voice was quiet, but there was something dangerous in it. "No, sir," I said. "I just think maybe a different approach might help." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Fine," he said. "You have 1 week. If you find something useful, great. If not, maybe you'll learn to stay in your lane." The way he said "stay in your lane" made my stomach twist. But I nodded and said, "Thank you for the chance, sir." After he left, the room was silent. I could feel everyone looking at me. Some felt sorry for me. Others thought I was stupid. A few seemed excited to watch me fail. That night, I stayed at the office until almost midnight. I spread out all the case files on my desk and started reading everything from the beginning. The Megacorp case was huge, hundreds of pages of documents, emails, patents, and technical drawings. The story was this. A man named Dr. Percival Blackwood claimed he invented a new battery in his garage 5 years ago. He said he showed his invention to Megacorp, hoping they would buy it from him. Instead, he claimed they stole his idea and used it to make millions of dollars. Dr. Blackwood had proof that he invented the battery first. He had drawings, notes, and even a working model that he made before ever talking to Megacorp. The court had already seen this evidence, and it looked very bad for our client. Megacorp said they invented the battery themselves, using their own scientists and their own research, but they couldn't prove it. All their early research notes had been accidentally destroyed in a computer crash 2 years ago. All they had were the final designs and the finished product. It looked like Megacorp was lying. It looked like they really did steal Dr. Blackwood's invention. But something felt wrong to me. I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was something about Dr. Blackwood's story that didn't make sense. I spent the next 3 days reading every single document in the case. I made timelines, drew connections, and looked for patterns. I barely slept. I forgot to eat. My girlfriend Serafina kept calling to ask if I was okay, but I was too focused to talk. On the 4th day, I found it. Hidden in a pile of old emails was something that didn't belong. It was an email from Dr. Blackwood to his lawyer, sent just 2 weeks before he first contacted Megacorp. In the email, he was complaining about being broke and needing money fast. But here's the weird part. In that same email, he mentioned seeing an article about Megacorp's new research lab and their work on next-generation battery technology. Wait, if Dr. Blackwood had already invented his battery, why would he care about an article about Megacorp's battery research? I dug deeper. I found the article he mentioned. It was from a science magazine, published 3 weeks before Dr. Blackwood's email. The article talked about Megacorp's secret project to build better batteries for electric cars. It even mentioned some of the technical challenges they were trying to solve. The same technical challenges that Dr. Blackwood's invention happened to solve perfectly. My heart started beating faster. I had found something, but I needed more proof. I spent the next 2 days tracking down every piece of information I could find about Dr. Blackwood. I looked through public records, old newspaper articles, even social media posts. What I found made my blood run cold. Dr. Blackwood wasn't just some innocent inventor. He was a con artist with a history of trying to steal other people's work. He had tried similar lawsuits against 3 other companies in the past 5 years. Each time he would invent something that solved exactly the problems those companies were working on. Each time the companies would settle out of court rather than fight a long, expensive battle. But this time was different. This time, I had caught him. I found proof that Dr. Blackwood had somehow gotten inside information about Megacorp's research. I found proof that he had built his invention after learning about their work, not before. I even found proof that the dates on his original documents had been changed. Dr. Blackwood wasn't the victim. He was the thief. I had saved the case. I had saved Megacorp from paying $5 million. I had probably saved our law firm from going out of business. I was so excited I could barely sit still. I printed out all my evidence, organized it perfectly, and wrote a clear report explaining everything I had found. Then I called Mr. Sterling's office and asked to see him right away. His secretary, a stern woman named Prudence, told me he was busy. But when I explained that I had found something important about the Megacorp case, she put me through immediately. "You found something?" Mr. Sterling's voice sounded surprised. "Yes, sir. I found proof that Dr. Blackwood is lying. I can prove that Megacorp didn't steal anything. In fact, I can prove that Dr. Blackwood is the one who tried to steal from them." There was silence on the phone for a moment. "Bring me everything," he said finally. "Right now." I grabbed my evidence and ran to his office. My hands were shaking with excitement as I knocked on his door. This was it. This was my moment to prove that I belonged. This was my chance to show everyone that the quiet guy from research could do big things. Mr. Sterling's office was huge, with dark wood furniture and paintings that probably cost more than I made in a year. He was sitting behind his massive desk, looking at me with an expression I couldn't read. "Show me what you found," he said. I spread out all my evidence on his desk and explained everything. I showed him the timeline, the emails, the proof that Dr. Blackwood was a con artist. I explained how he had gotten inside information and used it to create a fake invention. I showed him how the dates had been changed and how this was all part of a pattern. As I talked, I watched Mr. Sterling's face change. At first, he looked skeptical, then surprised, then amazed. By the time I finished, his eyes were wide and he was leaning forward in his chair. "This is," he started, then stopped. He picked up one of the documents and read it again. "This is incredible. You've not only saved the case, you've given us a countersuit. We can go after Dr. Blackwood for fraud." My chest swelled with pride. "Thank you, sir. I'm just glad I could help." He stood up and walked around the desk. For a moment, I thought he might shake my hand or pat me on the back. Instead, he gathered up all my evidence and held it against his chest. "This stays between us," he said. "I'll take this to the lawyers and we'll handle it from here." "Of course, sir. Should I write up a more detailed report?" "No," he said quickly. "That won't be necessary. You've done enough." Something in his tone made me pause. There was something cold in his voice, something that made my stomach twist. But I pushed the feeling away. I had done good work. I had saved the company. Everything would be fine. "Will there be anything else, sir?" "No. You can go back to your regular work now." I left his office feeling like I was walking on air. I had done it. I had proven myself. I couldn't wait to tell Serafina. I couldn't wait to see the looks on my coworkers' faces when they heard what I had accomplished. But as I walked back to my desk, I noticed something strange. People were looking at me, but not in the way I expected. They weren't looking proud or impressed. They were looking sorry for me. I didn't understand it then. I wouldn't understand it until the next morning. The next day started like any other. I got to work early, ready to dive into whatever new project they would give me. Maybe they would let me work on more important cases now. Maybe they would finally see that I could do more than just basic research. At 9 a.m. sharp, Cordelia called me into her office. She looked uncomfortable, like she had eaten something that disagreed with her. "Thad," she said, not meeting my eyes, "I need to talk to you about something." "Is this about the Megacorp case? Did the lawyers like what I found?" She winced. "Actually, that's what I need to discuss. There's been a development." My heart started beating faster. "What kind of development?" "Mr. Sterling called me last night. He told me that the evidence you found, well, it turns out it wasn't as solid as we thought." I stared at her. "What do you mean? I double-checked everything. I have proof." "The lawyers reviewed it," she interrupted. "They said it wouldn't hold up in court. They said there were holes in your research." "That's impossible. I spent days on this. I found—" "I'm sorry, Thad. I know you worked hard, but sometimes these things don't pan out." I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. "But I proved that Dr. Blackwood was lying. I proved he was a con artist. I have documentation." "The lawyers know what they're doing," Cordelia said firmly. "They've decided to settle the case out of court. Megacorp will pay Dr. Blackwood a smaller amount, only $1 million instead of $5 million. It's still a win." Only $1 million? Like that was nothing. "But we don't have to pay anything if we use my evidence," I said. "We could win the whole case." Cordelia sighed. "Thad, I know this is disappointing, but you need to trust that the lawyers know best. Sometimes what looks like good evidence to us isn't good enough for court." I wanted to argue more, but something in her expression stopped me. She looked uncomfortable, like she was delivering a message she didn't believe herself. "Okay," I said quietly. "I understand." But I didn't understand. Not at all. I went back to my desk feeling confused and hurt. Maybe I had made a mistake. Maybe my evidence wasn't as strong as I thought. Maybe I was just a research guy who had tried to do a lawyer's job. For the next few days, I threw myself back into my regular work. I tried to forget about the Megacorp case and focus on the small research projects that came across my desk. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Then, on Friday afternoon, everything became clear. I was working late again, alone in the office except for the cleaning crew. I needed to use the printer near Mr. Sterling's office, and as I walked down the hall, I heard voices coming from behind his door. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, I was just walking by, but when I heard my name, I stopped. Can't believe that little research guy actually found all that, someone was saying. It sounded like Maximilian Rivers, one of the senior lawyers. Lucky for us he did, came Mr. Sterling's voice. Blackwood was about to take us for $5 million. Now we'll settle for $1 million and I'll take credit for the brilliant legal strategy that saved the day. What about the research guy? Thaddeus? What about him? He's just a nobody who got lucky. He'll never know the difference. My blood turned to ice. Still, Maximilian said, he did save us $4 million. Shouldn't he get some recognition? Maybe a bonus? Mr. Sterling laughed. It was a cruel sound. For what? Doing his job? He's paid to research. He researched. End of story. But he saved the case. I saved the case. Mr. Sterling's voice got hard. I'm the one who will present the settlement terms. I'm the one who will take credit with the partners. That research, nobody will go back to his little desk and his little projects and be grateful he still has a job. I felt sick. My hands were shaking. I had saved them $4 million, and they were going to pretend I had nothing to do with it. But it got worse. Actually, Mr. Sterling continued, I've been thinking we should let him go anyway. Fire him? Why? He's getting too big for his britches, thinking he can do lawyer's work. Next thing you know, he'll be asking for a promotion or a raise. Better to cut him loose now before he becomes a problem. But he's a good researcher. There are 100 good researchers out there who will work for less money and cause fewer problems. Besides, after the megacorp settlement, we'll have plenty of budget flexibility. The room went quiet. I stood in the hallway, frozen, as the truth crashed over me like a cold wave. They were going to fire me. After I saved them $4 million, they were going to fire me and take all the credit. I heard chairs moving inside the office. They were getting ready to leave. I quickly walked to the printer, grabbed some random papers, and hurried back to my desk. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode. As I sat there, staring at my computer screen, I felt something I had never felt before. It wasn't just anger or hurt. It was something deeper, darker. It was the feeling of trust being shattered into a million pieces. I had given 3 years of my life to this company. I had worked nights and weekends. I had believed that hard work and loyalty mattered. I had saved them millions of dollars. And they were going to throw me away like garbage. That night, I didn't go home. I stayed in the office, thinking, planning. The cleaning crew came and went. The security guard made his rounds. And I sat in the dark, staring out at the city lights, feeling something new growing inside me. They thought I was just lucky. They thought I was just some nobody who stumbled onto something important. They were about to learn how wrong they were. But first, I had to make sure I had everything I needed, because what I was planning would only work if I was very, very careful. I spent the weekend putting together a plan. I made copies of every document related to the megacorp case. I saved every email, every research note, every piece of evidence I had found. I created a detailed timeline showing exactly how I had uncovered Dr. Blackwood's fraud. Most importantly, I recorded every conversation I could remember from that night outside Mr. Sterling's office. I wrote down exactly what they had said about taking credit for my work and about firing me. By Monday morning, I was ready, but I wasn't ready for what happened next. I walked into the office that Monday feeling like a different person. The old Thad, the one who believed in fairness and hard work, was gone. In his place was someone harder, someone who understood how the world really worked. At 10 a.m., Cordelia called me into her office again. This time, Mr. Sterling was there waiting for me. "Thad," she said, still not meeting my eyes. "We need to talk." I sat down and looked at both of them. Mr. Sterling was wearing his most expensive suit and his coldest smile. "I'll get right to the point," he said. "We're letting you go." Even though I had been expecting it, hearing those words still hit me like a slap. "May I ask why?" "Budget cuts," he said smoothly. "We need to reduce staff in the research department. Unfortunately, you're the most junior member, so you'll be the first to go." Liar. I wanted to scream it, but I kept my face calm. "I see," I said. "This wouldn't have anything to do with the megacorp case, would it?" Something flickered in his eyes. "What about the megacorp case?" Well, I spent a lot of time on that research. I thought maybe I had done something wrong. Oh, that? He waved his hand like he was swatting a fly. That was nothing. You got lucky and found a few documents that might have been useful. But in the end, it didn't amount to anything. The lawyers handled the real work. There it was, the word that would haunt him forever. Lucky. Just lucky? I asked quietly. That's right. You stumbled onto some information, but you didn't understand what it meant. Real legal work requires education, experience, and skill, things you don't have. I nodded slowly. So my research didn't actually help with the case? Not really. We would have reached the same settlement with or without your contribution. Another lie. A massive, shameless lie. I understand, I said. When would you like my last day to be? Today, he said. We'll have someone pack up your desk. Security will escort you out in an hour. In an hour, like I was a criminal. Of course, I said. I'll just gather my personal items. I stood up to leave, but Mr. Sterling's voice stopped me. Oh, and Thad? I hope you understand that everything you worked on here is confidential company information. You can't discuss any of our cases with anyone outside the firm. There are serious legal consequences for breaking confidentiality. It was a threat. He was warning me to keep my mouth shut about what I had found. I understand completely, sir. I walked out of that office for the last time, and as the door closed behind me, I smiled, because Mr. Sterling had just made his biggest mistake. He thought he was threatening me into silence. Instead, he had just given me the perfect reason to do what I was planning to do next. You see, there was one thing Mr. Sterling didn't know about me. One thing that was about to change everything. My girlfriend Serafina, the one who had been calling to check on me during those long nights of research. She wasn't just my girlfriend. She was an investigative reporter for the Chicago Tribune, and she had been very, very interested in the story I had been telling her about corruption in big law firms. As I cleaned out my desk, watching my coworkers avoid eye contact, I thought about what was going to happen next. Mr. Sterling thought he had won. He thought he had gotten rid of a problem and taken credit for work that would make him look like a hero. He had no idea that his worst nightmare was about to begin. Because sometimes, when you push someone far enough, when you take everything they have and spit in their face, you don't get a broken victim. You get an enemy who has nothing left to lose. And I was about to show Mr. Sterling and everyone at Sterling Associates exactly what happens when you call the wrong person just lucky. That night, I sat in Serafina's small apartment, surrounded by boxes of evidence and copies of documents. She was pacing back and forth, her dark eyes blazing with excitement. "This is huge, Thad," she said, holding up one of the files. "This isn't just about you getting fired. This is about a major law firm stealing credit, defrauding clients, and destroying evidence." Serafina had been working as an investigative reporter for 5 years. She specialized in exposing corruption in big companies. When I first started telling her about the strange things happening at my job, she had listened with professional interest. Now, seeing all the evidence laid out, she looked like a hunter who had found the biggest prey of her life. "Are you sure you want to do this?" she asked, sitting down next to me. "Once we publish this story, there's no going back. Sterling will come after you with everything he has." I thought about Mr. Sterling's cold smile. I thought about him calling me just lucky. I thought about him planning to fire me after I saved his company millions of dollars. "I'm sure," I said. "He made his choice when he decided to throw me away. Now I'm making mine." Over the next week, Serafina and I worked together like we were building a case for court. She used her reporter skills to verify everything I had found. She contacted Dr. Blackwood and convinced him to talk. She reached out to the other companies he had tried to scam. She even found 2 former employees of Sterling Associates who were willing to talk about other cases where the firm had taken credit for work done by junior staff. But the real breakthrough came when Serafina did something I never would have thought of. She called Megacorp directly. "Hello," she said, using her most professional voice. "This is Serafina Cross from the Chicago Tribune. I'm working on a story about innovative legal strategies. and I understand that Sterling Associates recently helped you with a major lawsuit. Could you tell me about the brilliant legal work that saved your company millions of dollars?" The Megacorp executive was happy to talk. He bragged about how Mr. Sterling himself had uncovered evidence of fraud that completely turned the case around. He talked about Sterling's genius and incredible attention to detail. He mentioned that they were so impressed they were considering giving Sterling Associates even more business. Serafina recorded every word. When she played the recording back for me, I felt a cold fury settle in my chest. Mr. Sterling hadn't just stolen credit for my work. He was using it to get more clients, more money, more success. Everything built on a lie. "We have enough," Serafina said. "More than enough." But I shook my head. "Not yet. I want to make sure that when this hits, it destroys everything he's built on my back." That's when I remembered something. During my research on the Megacorp case, I had found some other files on Sterling's computer system. Files that had nothing to do with Megacorp, but everything to do with how Sterling Associates really operated. I had found emails showing that the firm regularly took credit for work done by junior staff. I had found evidence that they had overcharged clients by claiming senior lawyers did work that was actually done by research assistants. I had found proof that they had settled cases cheaply and then lied to clients about how much they could have won. The Megacorp case wasn't the only fraud. It was just the tip of the iceberg. "We need to go bigger," I told Serafina. "This isn't just about revenge anymore. This is about exposing a pattern of corruption that's been going on for years." She grinned. "Now you're thinking like a real investigative reporter." We spent another week building the bigger story. Serafina reached out to former clients who had been cheated. She contacted other law firms who had competed against Sterling Associates and lost cases they should have won. She even found a former partner who had left the firm years ago because he couldn't stand the corruption. By the time we were done, we had enough evidence to write a book. But we weren't writing a book. We were writing a newspaper story that would run on the front page of the Chicago Tribune. The night before the story was supposed to publish, my phone rang. It was Cordelia. "Thad," she said, and her voice sounded strange. "I need to talk to you. Can you meet me for coffee?" I almost said no, but something in her tone made me curious. "Okay, where?" We met at a small cafe near the Tribune building. Cordelia looked terrible. Her eyes were red like she had been crying, and her hands shook as she held her coffee cup. "I know what you're doing," she said quietly. My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "The story, the reporter girlfriend, the investigation." She looked up at me with sad eyes. "Word gets around in legal circles. Sterling knows." I felt like ice water was running through my veins. "How long has he known?" "Since yesterday. Someone at the Tribune called Sterling Associates for comment on the story. Sterling figured out it had to be you." "What's he going to do?" Cordelia took a shaky breath. "He's going to sue you for everything you have. Breach of confidentiality, theft of company property, defamation. He'll tie you up in court for years. Even if you win, the legal fees will destroy you." I stared at her. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I can't stand it anymore." Tears started running down her face. "I've worked for that man for 10 years, and I've watched him destroy good people over and over again. You're not the first employee he's stolen credit from. You won't be the last." She reached into her purse and pulled out a thick envelope. "These are copies of internal memos from Sterling's office, performance reviews where he takes credit for other people's work, budget reports showing how much money the firm has made by lying about who does what, email chains where he brags to other partners about how easy it is to manipulate junior staff." I opened the envelope and looked at the papers inside. It was damning evidence of years of systematic fraud. "Why?" I asked. "Why are you helping me?" "Because you did something I never had the courage to do," she said. "You fought back, and because that Megacorp case, what you found saved more than just Sterling's reputation. It saved my job, and the jobs of 20 other people. We all know what really happened, even if we can't say it." She stood up to leave, then turned back to me. "Be careful, Thad. Sterling doesn't just want to win. He wants to destroy you so completely that no one will ever dare to cross him again. That night, I called Serafina and told her everything. She listened without interrupting, then said the words I was hoping to hear. "We publish tomorrow morning, exactly as planned. But what about the lawsuits? What about Sterling coming after us?" "Let him come," she said. "We have the truth on our side. And now, thanks to Cordelia, we have even more truth than he knows about." The story ran on the front page of the Chicago Tribune on a Thursday morning. The headline was simple, but devastating. Major law firm accused of systematic fraud. How Sterling Associates built success on stolen work. Serafina had written it perfectly. She told the story of the Megacorp case, but she also told the bigger story of how Sterling Associates had been cheating clients and employees for years. She had quotes from former employees, former clients, and industry experts. She had documents, emails, and recorded conversations. And she had my story at the center of it all. The story of a dedicated employee who uncovered a $5 million fraud, saved his company, and was fired for being just lucky. My phone started ringing at 6 a.m. Reporters from other newspapers, TV stations, legal experts wanting to comment on the story. By 8 a.m., there were news vans parked outside my apartment building. At 9 a.m., my phone rang again. This time, it was a number I recognized. "You have made the biggest mistake of your life." Mr. Sterling's voice was cold with rage. "I'm going to sue you into the ground. I'm going to make sure you never work in this city again. I'm going to—" "Mr. Sterling," I interrupted, "have you seen the news this morning?" "What news?" "Turn on Channel 7. I hung up and turned on the TV myself. The morning news was running a segment about the Tribune story. But that wasn't the big news. The big news was that the Illinois State Bar Association had announced they were opening an investigation into Sterling Associates. The big news was that Megacorp had issued a statement saying they were reviewing their relationship with the firm. The big news was that 3 other major clients had already called to cancel their contracts. But the biggest news was still coming. At 10 a.m., FBI agents walked into the offices of Sterling Associates with a search warrant. They were investigating charges of fraud, embezzlement, and racketeering. The investigation had been triggered by the Tribune story, but it was moving fast because the FBI had already been looking into the firm based on other complaints. I watched it all on TV from Serafina's apartment. News cameras filmed FBI agents carrying boxes of evidence out of the building where I had worked for 3 years. The same building where I had been called just lucky and thrown away like trash. At noon, the news got even better. Dr. Percival Blackwood, the con artist who had tried to steal from Megacorp, had been arrested. The evidence I had found was being used to charge him with fraud in multiple states. But here's the beautiful part. His lawyer was telling reporters that Blackwood was willing to testify against Sterling Associates in exchange for a reduced sentence. You see, Blackwood claimed that someone at Sterling Associates had actually helped him with his scam. Someone had given him inside information about Megacorp's research. Someone had helped him create fake documents and change dates. That someone, according to Blackwood, was Mr. Sterling himself. I couldn't believe it at first. But as I thought about it, it started to make sense. Sterling had been so quick to dismiss my evidence. He had been so eager to settle the case quietly. He had been so determined to keep me from getting credit for the work. What if Sterling had been planning to split the settlement money with Blackwood? What if the whole thing had been a setup from the beginning? What if Sterling had only turned against Blackwood when I found evidence that could expose them both? The FBI seemed to think it was possible. By evening, they had arrested Mr. Sterling at his home. The charges included conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, and racketeering. The news showed him being led away in handcuffs, his expensive suit wrinkled, his silver hair messy, his cold blue eyes wide with panic. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen, but the story wasn't over yet. Over the next few weeks, the investigation expanded. The FBI found evidence that Sterling Associates had been running scams for years. They had been overcharging clients, stealing credit from employees, and even taking bribes from opposing counsel to throw cases. Dozens of former employees came forward with their own stories. The firm had stolen credit from junior lawyers, research assistants, paralegals, and even secretaries. They had built their reputation on the backs of people they considered worthless. The Illinois State Bar Association suspended Sterling's license to practice law. 3 other senior partners were also suspended pending investigation. The firm's assets were frozen. Within a month, Sterling Associates had completely collapsed. Over 200 employees lost their jobs. I felt bad about that until I realized that most of them were happy to be free of such a corrupt place. Many of them found better jobs at honest firms. Some even thanked me for exposing the truth. Cordelia was one of them. She got a job at a smaller firm that paid her more money and treated her with respect. She sent me a card that said simply, "Thank you for having the courage I didn't have." But the best part was still coming. 3 months after the Tribune story ran, I got a call from a lawyer named Octavius Fairchild. He represented a group of former Sterling Associates clients who were suing the firm for fraud. "Mr. Thaddeus," he said, "we'd like to offer you a job." "A job?" "As our lead investigator. You have a gift for uncovering fraud, and we need someone with your skills to help us recover the money that Sterling Associates stole from their clients." The job paid twice what I had made at Sterling Associates. More importantly, it was a chance to use my skills to help people who had been cheated, instead of helping cheaters get away with their crimes. I took the job. 6 months later, I was sitting in a courtroom watching Mr. Bartholomew Sterling III get sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. He looked nothing like the confident, cold man who had fired me. His expensive suit was gone, replaced by an orange jumpsuit. His silver hair was gray and thin. His blue eyes were empty and defeated. When the judge asked if he had anything to say before sentencing, Sterling stood up slowly. He looked around the courtroom, and for a moment, his eyes met mine. "I want to say," he began, his voice shaking, "that I made mistakes. I hurt people who trusted me. I destroyed lives and careers for my own gain." He paused, and I could see tears in his eyes. "But the biggest mistake I made was underestimating a good man who was just trying to do his job. I called him lucky, but the truth is, I was the lucky one. Lucky to have an employee who cared enough about justice to risk everything to expose the truth." He looked directly at me. "Mr. Thaddeus, I know you'll probably never forgive me, but I want you to know that you were never just lucky. You were better than all of us. You were what we should have been." The judge gave him 15 years. He'll be eligible for parole in 10. As I walked out of that courtroom, Serafina took my hand. "How does it feel?" she asked. I thought about it. I thought about the scared research assistant who had believed that hard work and loyalty would be rewarded. I thought about the man who had been crushed by betrayal and fired for being just lucky. I thought about the person I had become, someone who fought back, someone who stood up for what was right, someone who wasn't afraid to take on powerful people who thought they were untouchable. "It feels like justice," I said. But the real ending to this story came a year later. I was working late in my new office, investigating another case of corporate fraud, when my assistant knocked on my door. But the story wasn't over yet. Over the next few weeks, the investigation expanded. The FBI found evidence that Sterling Associates had been running scams for years. They had been overcharging clients, stealing credit from employees, and even taking bribes from opposing counsel to throw cases. Dozens of former employees came forward with their own stories. The firm had stolen credit from junior lawyers, research assistants, paralegals, and even secretaries. They had built their reputation on the backs of people they considered worthless. The Illinois State Bar Association suspended Sterling's license to practice law. 3 other senior partners were also suspended pending investigation. The firm's assets were frozen. Within a month, Sterling Associates had completely collapsed. Over 200 employees lost their jobs. I felt bad about that until I realized that most of them were happy to be free of such a corrupt place. Many of them found better jobs at honest firms. Some even thanked me for exposing the truth. Cordelia was one of them. She got a job at a smaller firm that paid her more money and treated her with respect. She sent me a card that said simply, "Thank you for having the courage I didn't have." But the best part was still coming. 3 months after the Tribune story ran, I got a call from a lawyer named Octavius Fairchild. He represented a group of former Sterling Associates clients who were suing the firm for fraud. "Mr. Thaddeus," he said, "we'd like to offer you a job." "A job?" "As our lead investigator. You have a gift for uncovering fraud, and we need someone with your skills to help us recover the money that Sterling Associates stole from their clients." The job paid twice what I had made at Sterling Associates. More importantly, it was a chance to use my skills to help people who had been cheated, instead of helping cheaters get away with their crimes. I took the job. 6 months later, I was sitting in a courtroom watching Mr. Bartholomew Sterling III get sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. He looked nothing like the confident, cold man who had fired me. His expensive suit was gone, replaced by an orange jumpsuit. His silver hair was gray and thin. His blue eyes were empty and defeated. When the judge asked if he had anything to say before sentencing, Sterling stood up slowly. He looked around the courtroom, and for a moment, his eyes met mine. "I want to say," he began, his voice shaking, "that I made mistakes. I hurt people who trusted me. I destroyed lives and careers for my own gain." He paused, and I could see tears in his eyes. "But the biggest mistake I made was underestimating a good man who was just trying to do his job. I called him lucky, but the truth is, I was the lucky one. Lucky to have an employee who cared enough about justice to risk everything to expose the truth." He looked directly at me. "Mr. Thaddeus, I know you'll probably never forgive me, but I want you to know that you were never just lucky. You were better than all of us. You were what we should have been." The judge gave him 15 years. He'll be eligible for parole in 10. As I walked out of that courtroom, Serafina took my hand. "How does it feel?" she asked. I thought about it. I thought about the scared research assistant who had believed that hard work and loyalty would be rewarded. I thought about the man who had been crushed by betrayal and fired for being just lucky. I thought about the person I had become, someone who fought back, someone who stood up for what was right, someone who wasn't afraid to take on powerful people who thought they were untouchable. "It feels like justice," I said. But the real ending to this story came a year later. I was working late in my new office, investigating another case of corporate fraud, when my assistant knocked on my door. "Mr. Thaddeus, there's someone here to see you. He says it's important." I looked up to see a young man, maybe 25 years old, standing nervously in my doorway. He was wearing a cheap suit and holding a folder full of papers. He looked exactly like I had looked 3 years ago, eager, hopeful, and completely unprepared for how cruel the world could be. "Sir," he said, "my name is Fitzwilliam. I used to work for a law firm downtown. I found something big, but when I tried to tell my boss, he fired me. He said I was just causing trouble." I smiled and gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Sit down, Fitzwilliam. Tell me everything." As he started to explain his story, I thought about how funny life could be. 3 years ago, I was the one sitting in a chair like that, desperate for someone to listen, desperate for someone to care about the truth. Now I was the one with the power to help. Now I was the one who could make sure that good people who did the right thing didn't get thrown away like garbage. Now I was the one who could turn just lucky into just justice. And that, I realized, was the best revenge of all. Not just destroying the people who had hurt me, but becoming the person I had needed when I was at my lowest point. Not just fighting back, but fighting for others who couldn't fight for themselves. Mr. Sterling had been right about one thing. I wasn't just lucky. I was something much more dangerous than that. I was someone who refused to give up. I was someone who believed that the truth mattered more than power. I was someone who had learned that sometimes, when the system fails you, you have to become the system. As I listened to Fitzwilliam's story, I reached for my phone to call Serafina. She was going to love this new story. After all, there are always more corrupt bosses who need to learn that calling someone just lucky can be the unluckiest thing they ever do. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's becoming so successful that you can protect others from going through what you went through. Sometimes it's turning your pain into purpose, your betrayal into a mission, and your lowest moment into the foundation for the most meaningful work of your life. And sometimes, when someone calls you just lucky, the real luck is theirs, because they just gave you the motivation to prove them wrong in ways they never saw coming. If this story inspired you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Drop a comment below and let me know where you are watching from.